Good evening. A lot of ink has been spent on the government's decision to go ahead with what government strategists are calling big bang reforms and what the critics are calling harakiri, colossal mistake and an eyewash, depending on which side of the political spectrum they might be. In one broad stroke of the brush, the government raised diesel prices, capped subsidies on LPG, allowed FDI in aviation and multi-brand retail, and also unveiled a disinvestment program. The government seems to have gone all in, and as some have opined, cut loose with a vengeance, as if to make up for months of policy inaction. The decisions on FDI were long awaited and needed for continuing the reforms, but the opposition to these decisions comes with the common refrain that the timing and the intent of these reforms are not right, and that these decisions were taken as a result of political expediency rather than national economic prudence. The opposition is also in a tricky position right now. The BJP's game plan to batter the ruling alliance over the coal and other corruption scandals, analysts have said, is most likely to lose steam, mainly because of the announcement made on Friday. And even worse, the opposition to the FDI and multi-brand retail and some other areas puts the main opposition party in its worst predicament, and that is on the same page as the left parties. Overnight, the nationalist right-wing opposition BJP finds itself on the same side as the left, which is opposing the big FDI push on ideological grounds. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on The Big Picture, we debate whether opposing reforms, any reforms, has become de rigueur. Why is it that people seem to love to hate reforms? And also whether this blanket opposition by some circles is informed opposition or just blocking tactics for the sake of opposing. We will try and answer all these questions and more. But first, let me introduce the panel tonight. Rajesh Mahapatra is the deputy editor of the Hindustan Times. He joins me in the studio. Also with us is Sheshadri Chari, senior leader of the BJP. Welcome to the show, sir. Also joining us in a bit will be Nilotpal Basu, who is the Central Committee member of the CPI-M. We'll also get you views from senior Congress leader and Rajya Sabha MP Shankar Aiyar, but that's a little bit later in the program. Let's start with the current scenario. If I could, I would like to start with Rajesh, if I could. Government ally, Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, her deadline is over. Neither the government nor the PM seems willing to budge even an inch on that. As we speak, she's meeting with the leaders in town hall in Kolkata, and nobody really knows what she's going to do. But is it possible, using the tone that she did, roll back or else, did she miscalculate? And do you think she will eventually have to fall in line like she did on the presidential nomination issue?
Well, a lot of things have changed after the presidential elections. A lot of things have changed at the level of national politics, and a lot of things have changed for Mamata as well. At this point in time, as you said, as we speak, they are still in a meeting. And there has been speculation, and those speculations have been based on certain past precedents, wherein she has come around, and she has come around primarily because she... what seems to have worked for the central government is that the West Bengal state government's finances are in a mess, and if Mamata has to pull along, she needs the center to be on her side, and those are the things which have weighed heavily on her in terms of finally whether she has been able to call the bluff or not. I think this time the situation is a little different. This time around, what would be weighing on her mind and what would be weighing on others' minds also as to what some of the other key players, as far as UPA is concerned, could be doing.
Like the Samajwadi Party.
Namely Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party. Look, the UPA needs the support of any two of these three outfits. To stay the course until 2014. Right. If in her assessment she feels that well, this government is not going to pull along and that they are there is going to be an election well before 2014, I think then she would choose to lead the way in pulling out of the government.
Right. And that could be a possibility, but we'll have to wait for the meeting to end and see what she does actually.
But I think also that it would be very difficult for any leader or any political expert or anyone who tracks Indian politics at this point in time to say which way things are going to go.
Sure. I'd like a quick, before we talk about the opposition to government decision and the crux of our show, I'd like to get a quick reaction from Mr. Sheshadri Chari, who's joined us as well. Quick reaction, sir, on how you feel about the predicament that your party finds itself in right now. I'm referring to the fact, of course, that the BJP and the left very rarely are on the same side. And do you see this as a predicament at all?
No, I don't see this as a predicament in the first place. The left and the BJP have come together on earlier occasions also on the Indo-US nuclear deal and much earlier on even on economic issues also. So I don't think it is a predicament, number one. Number two, as far as the issue of supporting the economic reforms are concerned, the BJP does not think that what is happening today is reform, number one, and reforms are not unknown to us, two, and as far as the fear factor is concerned, we are not afraid of reforms at all. But what has happened today is not reform, it is ad hocism. In a way, it is something of a knee-jerk reaction to the accusations made against the Prime Minister that he is the biggest non-performing asset of the UPA government. So, if he is reacting to what the Economist writes or to what Time magazine writes or to what some of his party colleagues are telling him or what the public perception about him is, I think it's a gross underperformance.
Right, but Mr. Chari, another follow-up there. There is a school of thought which says that the BJP may perhaps believe it's being faithful to its Swadeshi roots by opposing FDI and multi-brand retail. But even among its right-wing hardcore support base, the argument to oppose the FDI in multi-brand retail is not gaining much resonance or support except among the die-hard followers. Your reaction to that this could perhaps also backfire, like some parts of your decision not to back the nuclear deal did backfire for you among the urban middle class?
No, see, we are not representing only the urban middle class. I am not looking at this from the vote bank or I am not looking at it from this social segment's point of view. I am not even looking at the political fallout, whether the UPA government continues till 2014 or whether Mamata Banerjee withdraws or whether Samajwadi Party supports them from outside and then subverts them from inside. These are all political ramifications. I am more concerned about the crux of the economic issues that are facing the country, like unemployment, inflation and extreme corruption affecting our economic fundamentals.
Right.
So if you look at these three factors, what the government is doing now is grossly insufficient, and we as an economic situation today are not ready for this FDI in retail trade in the manner that it has come.
Right. Mr. Chari, I'd like to get a quick reaction from Rajesh in the studio to what you just said. Rajesh, do you buy the argument that the BJP is giving right now? Because ideologically, they're not opposed to FDI as such. They, in fact, as our present Commerce Minister claims, that he has that note that the NDA commission, the 100% in FDI, ideologically, they don't have anything to not to support it. But do you think they're miscalculating this time around by not supporting the government on this issue?
I think there is a reason for BJP to be opposing FDI in multi-brand retail. I think of all the measures that have been announced, one can understand BJP's opposition to only one of them, which is FDI in multi-brand retail, because BJP's political constituency has for a long time been that of traders and
small shopkeepers and
they are definitely going to be affected no matter what you say. However, I would tend to agree with what Mr. Chari said, that if you look at what are the biggest challenges that the Indian economy is confronting today, it's that of inflation. That tops the mind. The second that would come is the job growth that should have been happening is not happening. And the third element is that of corruption at public places, which today has come back and in many ways is also responsible for the kind of so-called policy paralysis or policy inaction that you are seeing is responsible. On those three fronts, the government hasn't done anything substantive. The government isn't doing anything substantive. If the connotation of economic reform has to be a meaningful one, then one would say we need to address these three issues upfront. And that should have been on top of the priority for the government, and that hasn't happened.
Right.
The other thing which I saw you spoke about, has the government broken the policy things, policy paralysis, and policy action has begun. When this policy, apart from the corruption, the other factor that weighed on the government where it didn't move on the policy front, I have always held, is that this government was perhaps in the second tenure wasn't clear about the political mandate or the people's mandate it had in terms of going ahead with certain critical policy measures. Today, that confusion is clear. Perhaps this government doesn't any longer care for what is the ground reality, how would people respond, and therefore it is going ahead.
So you're saying that they didn't understand the mandate to start with, but now they decided to go ahead anyway?
Because I don't think now this government doesn't seem to be in a mood to be caring for the sentiments that are prevalent on the ground.
I'll stop you there. I'd like to show you what Mr. Shankar Aiyar told us just a while earlier. We spoke to him about the opposition regarding the FDI issue, especially in multi-brand retail and aviation and others. This is what he had to say on the opposition or to these issues. Let's take a look.
That's democracy. Democracy is a dialectic between a thesis and an antithesis. And the way out in a democracy is for a majority opinion to prevail. And it's only very, very rarely that you seek a consensus with the opposition. You generally face the opposition that comes and take the decision which you think is right. And there is a parliamentary procedure whereby Parliament can validate or invalidate the decision that you take. But certainly those procedures do not include the kind of barracking, shouting, disruption that has been so characteristic of our Parliament for the last 2 years and has in fact stood in the way of parliamentary procedures being followed in order to bring down or alternatively sustain the government. So I'm not surprised that the opposition wishes to oppose. It's their duty to oppose. And if they are inconsistent, well then we have the freedom to point out that they are inconsistent. And if the people don't like us, they can always remove us. We've after all often not been in power. At the same time, the opposition has never succeeded really in sustaining itself in power, except under Vajpayee III. And there they thought that they had done a superb job of making India shine until they were kicked out for having done actually extremely badly. So we are willing to take the ups and downs of democratic politics, and we are willing to live with the inconsistencies of the opposition. But to suggest that we cannot move forward unless the opposition and the government embrace each other is frankly to be undemocratic, if not anti-democratic.
As promised before, Nilotpal Basu joins us. He is the Central Committee member of the CPI-M. Sir, I asked Mr. Sheshadri Chari just a while ago about the predicament, as some people call it, that his party finds itself aligning with the left on this issue. Before I come to that, let me ask you this. The argument of the left, as well as the CPI-M and the General Secretary, Mr. Karat, has said that it will spell doom for small shop owners, kirana stores as well. The counter argument to that, sir, is that this is part of a creational destruction that has to take place before things fall into place and a streamlining of the supply chain takes place. Do you buy that argument at all?
Absolutely not, because we had actually presented the UPA first government with a very detailed note in 2005 when this was mooted, and on the basis of our arguments at that point in time the government had gone back. Now, the basic problem, as I understand Rajesh has spoken, that the problem with the UPA 2 government is it does not have a common minimum program. And secondly, with the UPA 1 government, there was this left which was supporting from the outside, but which was insisting that the government sticks to the provisions of the common minimum program. Now, neither of these factors are present with the present government. Therefore, at no point in time it is very clear what it wants to do. For example, it is coming out with arguments and with policy measures which has nothing to do with reality. For example, the diesel price. Now, the whole argument of government is that we are giving subsidy, whereas the figures are very clear that the government is raising something like 1,80,000 crores in terms of taxes, cess, dividends from these oil companies. And you see, look at the ludicrousness of the government's argument that on the one hand it is accepting checks from the oil companies as part of the dividends which they would not have been able to pay unless they were making profits. So all these companies are making profits, and if you have a cost which is 10 rupees and you load it with a tax of 10 rupees and then sell the product at 15 rupees, you are saying we are subsidizing the product.
Right.
I mean, this is absurd. And on the retail sector also, you see, it is very, very clear because India is very intensive in terms of retail space. Every 11 Indian has to, for itself, 500 square feet of retail space. I mean, that is what the figure works out. If you take the total employment in the retail sector itself and divide the total turnover of the retail sector with that, you will find a figure of employment. And just compare that with the Walmart figure.
Point taken, sir. Point taken. We'll take a small break right now. I'd like to, Rajesh and Mr. Chari, to respond to what you've just said, but that's after the break. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come on the big picture after this break. Welcome back to the big picture. Rajesh, before I come to you, let me just throw out a line there for you. Is this opposition informed of the reform measures? Is this informed opposition, or is it just a fear of the unknown? And I'm talking about people, not just politicians in general, Indians in general, parties who oppose it. Is this informed opposition or fear of the unknown? Before you answer that, let's hear what Shankar had to say on this, and then we'll come to you. This is what Shankar Aiyar said when we asked him the same question.
Oppose aspects of the reform movement or specific proposals relating to economic reforms have the right to do so, and they have the right to put forward their arguments. Equally, the government has the right to rebut these arguments, and the judge will eventually be the people, eventually. In between, of course, Parliament will also be judging the issue. And especially in this era of coalition politics, it's not as if there is only one ruling party which then acts according to party discipline. There is a coalition, there's a coalition dharma, and there are specific points of a government's program which a member of the coalition may or may not like. We've been through this before in the Indo-US nuclear deal. The left, which had been supporting us from the outside, withdrew their support, and we were able to find succor elsewhere. And I dare say, if we are confronted with another similar situation, we are not just going to go down on bended knees. We'll try to explore what are the possibilities of pushing through the government's program while still retaining its majority in government. Because after all, it makes little sense if you're going to push a program and then find that because you pushed it, you're no more there in order to push it further. Then, of course, you'll have to go to the electorate. And it will be for the electorate to decide whether they want to go along with us or not. And we'll take whatever decision the people take in our stride. But before the people vote, we will do our best to explain to them why we decided to do whatever it was that we decided to do.
Rajesh, is this the fear of the unknown? Mani Shankar Aiyar gave a larger, broader picture.
I think it's a very. I think to give one shot answer would be very unfair because there is opposition from different segments and for different reasons. If a small trader or a mom and pop store owner is opposing, he's opposing because of the fear that he or she would lose his or her livelihood. Whether it's a fear of the unknown or not, we can only say when we see it. I mean, we can't say that now. There are two things. There are two things people are opposing: FDI in multi-brand retail and FDI in diesel price hike. There are people who are opposing because they are themselves directly affected. There are political parties who are opposing because there are certain political parties adhere to certain ideological thinking and certain, therefore they have certain economic policy orientation and they may be absolutely justified in their sphere of thinking. There are certain political parties which would oppose because it affects their vote banks, their political constituencies. So I don't think we can really address that question whether it's an informed opposition. I would rather say the question to be asked, is this an informed decision that doing so, allowing FDI in aviation or allowing FDI in multi-brand retail would really revive the economy, will really arrest the economic slide? Is that an informed decision? That's the question I would like to ask.
Point taken. Let me ask Mr. Chari a very quick question before I come to Mr. Basu. Mr. Chari, why do parties that are not in power, tend to oppose any and every reform that the party or the coalition in power tends to bring? Ideologically, the BJP is not opposed to FDI in multi-brand retail. In fact, the NDA prepared a note which said 100% in FDI in retail. So why the opposition now?
Basically we should remember one thing. The FDI issue or the reform issue has nothing to do with ideologies. If you look at the issue, FDI in retail trade has been accepted by the Communist Party of China. And China is doing very well as far as public distribution system vis-a-vis FDI is concerned. And Russia also adopted a different kind of economic situation, economic planning and program post the globalization era. So these economic policies do not confine itself to a strict ideology. If at all there is some ideological issue, it is more or less to do with Indianization, increasing production so that employment increases and optimum use of available resources in order to fulfill the supply-demand gap. So there is nothing like ideological opposition to FDI.
Right.
And when we talk about FDI, if there is a change in the stand, when the BJP thought that the economic situation is good for FDI, the Congress opposed it. We were not able to convince the Congress. And today we feel that what was good in 1994 or 96 or 2000 or 2001 does not sufficiently look good now.
Right.
Because the dollar-rupee parity has changed.
Point taken. I want to get Mr. Basu in very quickly. We don't have much time. Sir, there were earlier efforts at reforms as well. In 1991, the Prime Minister and then Finance Minister, who's now the Prime Minister, came under tremendous pressure not to go ahead with the liberalizing of the economy. They stuck to their stand, and by and large, people believe a large section of the population of this country benefited. Do you think that this time around, the same person is the Prime Minister of the country? Does he and his government have the political will to go through with all those reforms and that he's just initiated now? Do you think it's possible that he'll go ahead with more reforms to come?
I think that is up to them, but the problem is the response of the people depends on how they perceive the reforms, whether it is beneficial to them or it is going to adversely affect them. Now, I think a whole question mark is there on the kind of reforms that the Manmohan Singh government is initiating, because it has already faced a lot of problems in Europe, in America, where they initiated the whole process. So I think the Prime Minister is slightly clueless. And the other thing is the 20 years of reforms has shown that income disparities grow. And if you see the composition of the GDP in India, that profits have gone up from 20% to 60% of the total GDP, and labor contribution has come down from 30% to 20%. So clearly there is increasing inequality and also growing unemployment. Now both these steps, diesel price as well as a multi-brand retail FDI, is going to affect these basic two areas. Therefore, there will be tremendous popular resistance. I don't agree with Mr. Chari because it is all about ideology.
Right. Rajesh, do you agree with what Mr. Basu just said? And do you think, also I have a question for you, that isn't the fact that FDI in retail, multi-brand retail, it's neither that apocalyptic nightmare that the BJP and the left talk about, neither it's that miracle wand or magic wand that the proponents of it say. At the end of it, it basically is what side of the issue political parties align themselves at.
Yeah, I think you've said it. I can't articulate it better than that. Having said that, I would just go back to the diesel price hike issue. And I think it is important to talk about it because that's going to affect people more than the FDI in multi-brand retail, because FDI in multi-brand retail is, after all, is a long shot.
But do you agree with what Mr. Basu just said? There will be a widespread opposition to any other reform that the Prime Minister might try to initiate?
Along these lines.
Along these lines.
Well, we are seeing it, and if these are any indications, yes, there will be.
So you do agree with that, Mr. Basu there. One small comment from Mr. Shankar Aiyar that we'll take before we wind up the show. We asked him the same question that earlier Prime Ministers had taken decisions when they were under tremendous opposition, and that by and large had benefited the country. This is what he had to say on that issue.
The fact is that the political decisions in the 1991-96 government were taken by the Prime Minister, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, not by the Finance Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. It's only now, in UPA 1 and UPA 2, that the Finance Minister of Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao had to take the political decisions in his new capacity as Prime Minister. He showed great boldness in doing so with respect to the Indo-US nuclear deal, and his gamble paid off. And so, as everybody was singing at that time, Singh is king, Singh is king. Perhaps Singh will again be king. I don't know. But this is part of the rough and tumble of democratic political life. And I think we should take on this challenge with a smile on our face.
Before we wrap up, is Singh going to be king again?
We'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. We'll end that program on that note. We don't have any more time left. Thank you, Mr. Nilotpal Basu, for joining us, Rajesh Mahapatra as well, and Mr. Sheshadri Chari for coming on The Big Picture. This is Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.